Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So friends, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to welcome a chief guest. So friends, let us take for example that you are having a seminar or a conclave in your office, right? And you have been given the responsibility to introduce the chief guest. Somebody who has been invited from outside, somebody who's a very senior person in that particular industry, and you have been given the responsibility to make an introduction. Now, how do you do that? Now, there are certain things which you need to remember when you introduce a chief guest, and that is exactly what I want to talk about in this video. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to my screen because I want to explain to you with certain phrases and I want to give you examples on how to introduce a chief guest. All right. So, let's go to my screen. So, friends, one of the first thing which you need to do before you introduce a chief guest is that you need to do a complete research on that person, right? You can't introduce a person you know nothing about. This is like trying to sell a product or a service which you've never used, right? It doesn't work like that. So, what are the details you need to find out? Well, you need to find out things like their current position in organization, their major achievements or awards, their area of expertise, and why they are relevant to this specific event, right? And you can use a tool like LinkedIn to find out about this information because I'm sure all this information will be available on LinkedIn, right? So let's take an example. Let's say that you're introducing a doctor at a medical conference, right? So don't say that Dr. Sehgal is a surgeon. Instead, you can say something like this, that Dr. Sehgal has performed over 2,000 successful heart surgeries and pioneered a new technique that's now used in 15 countries. Friends, do you see the difference? Dr. Sehgal is a surgeon. Sounds very boring. But look at the second one. That's when people set up and take notice, right? Now, a tip I would like to offer for section 1 or for point number 1 is that you can always ask the chief guest's office for a brief bio, because these are people who keep going in for seminars and conclaves and they always have a bio ready. Otherwise, you can always get the information from LinkedIn, right? But there's absolutely no problem in asking for a brief bio. They would be gladly willing to give it to you. So that's point number 1. Do a complete research on your chief guest. Let's move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is where I give you a 3-part structure on how to introduce your chief guest. Let's start with point number 1. Point number 1 is a warm welcome, right? Now here you welcome the chief guest and you say something like, on behalf of our entire team at ABC Company, I am honored to welcome our chief guest for today. Right? Now you can use many phrases out here. You can say, I'm honored to welcome. We are delighted to welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a big round of applause to Mr. So-and-so. Right? These are just 2 or 3 examples. You can take the help of AI and AI can give you 5 to 6 different phrases or different ways to welcome your chief guest. So that's point number 1. You start with a warm welcome. Number 2 is the credentials. Now you've already done your part 1. You've researched about your particular chief guest and you have all the details ready. But please remember, make it just about 2 or 3 points only, right? Don't make it very long. Don't go to their kindergarten and their school and their college days, right? Don't do that. Focus on what matters to your audience. If it's a business event, talk about their business success. If it's an educational event, talk about their educational qualifications, right? So point number 1, warm welcome. Point number 2, credentials, right? Let's move on to point number 3. Point number 3 is the connection. Why have you called this person to your event, right? I'm sure there is something, something he has contributed something to that particular field that you have invited him to your seminar. Let's take an example, right? Her work in sustainable fashion aligns perfectly with our theme today, building a greener tomorrow. You see the connection? Building a greener tomorrow is the theme for your seminar, and you've invited somebody who has worked in sustainable fashion. So the connection is there. So you're telling the audience why you've invited that particular chief guest, right? So that's point number 2, the 3-part structure, right? Let's move on. Now here I would like to talk about the mistakes you should avoid while introducing a chief guest. First of all, friends, don't just read from a piece of paper, right? But if you're someone who doesn't remember the information, well, write down the bullet points on a piece of paper. But while you're doing that, make eye contact with the audience. Also make eye contact a couple of times with the chief guest also. If the chief guest is sitting on your left or your right, you need to make eye contact with him or her also. So that's point number 1. Don't just blindly read from a piece of paper. Number 2, don't make it too long, right? As I told you earlier, your introduction should not be more than the guest speech. You need to keep it crisp. The star, the guest is the star, not you. Okay, so don't make it too long. Number 3, mispronouncing their name. Now, this can be disaster. If the chief guest has a complicated name or a second name, well, you need to practice before you give that speech to get it correct. Maybe ask people in their company, maybe ask them, right? It's absolutely fine that am I pronouncing your name correctly? But you need to practice that. You cannot mispronounce the chief guest's name. And mistake number 4, being too casual or stiff about it, right? You have to strike the proper balance, right? Remember, you're not submitting a military report, but at the same time, you're not sitting in Starbucks, having a coffee with a friend or something. You have to strike the proper balance. So you can't make it very casual or too stiff. So friends, those are the points which I talked about. You need to do a complete research. I talked about the 3-part structure on how to introduce a particular person, and I talked about the mistakes you should avoid. Now let's put all this together and take an example. All right, here is a complete example which talks about whatever I've talked, the 3 things which I've talked till now. All right. Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our chief guest for today, Mrs. Priya Sharma. Mrs. Sharma is the founder and CEO of Green Tech Solutions, a company that has revolutionized waste management in over 50 cities across India. She was recently awarded the Environmental Champion Award by the United Nations. Her vision of a zero waste future aligns perfectly with our conference theme today. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mrs. Priya Sharma. So friends, you see, this is the example which I've given where I've tried to cover all the 2 or 3 things. So friends, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you need videos on more topics like these, please do mention in the comments below. I would be more than happy to mention it. If you have liked it, please give me a like. Please subscribe to my channel. I want to reach 2,500 subscribers now, and I desperately need your help. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.